We always say good SEO is good product management, and good product management is good SEO. And what that means is that every single aspect of the way you build your website, how you position your products to your customers, your user experience, your graphic design, all of that really falls under, from our view, the category of SEO. And I think Google has long been pushing that message as well.
Welcome to the third season of the Simple and Smart SEO Show, the podcast dedicated to empathy-driven, brand-building SEO. I'm your host, Crystal Waddell. I leverage my obsession with user experience to help business owners just like you optimize your website with confidence. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump into another great episode. Welcome back to the Simple and Smart SEO Show. I am super excited to be here today with our special guest, Ray Grieselhuber. I met Ray at the Brighton SEO conference. And when I say met, I saw him at the Brighton SEO conference in San Diego. And as soon as I heard him talk, I was like, you know what? This is a man that we need to have on the podcast. So Ray, thank you for being here today. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. And now you're back in the Midwest.
Yeah, in terms of personal, I grew up in the Midwest in Columbus, Ohio. And after college, my wife and I wanted to move out to San Diego, basically to get away from the winters. And we spent about 5 years there, to Japan after that. And then did some backpacking, came back, had a couple of kids, first kid, and then moved back to Japan. I started my company there and then moved back to the San Francisco Bay Area after that for about 7 years. And then in 2017, we moved to Ohio just to have more room. Kids are getting bigger, wanted to spread out a little bit. And then my company is a company called Demandsphere, and we're an SEO platform. We focus on data and analytics primarily for e-commerce companies, programmatic SEO teams. And what that means generally is basically any sort of website that's backed by a database, like travel websites, real estate, job search, that sort of thing. We typically have a lot of different types of content and keywords that you're trying to perform well for, and they tend to be very complicated things to manage. And so our software helps you get a handle on that, especially from the monitoring and prioritization side of things.
It's so interesting. When I hear that term e-commerce, I always think of Shopify, and I just think of products that people are selling direct to consumer. But you just mentioned a bunch of different industries that are actually e-commerce, even though I wouldn't have thought of them that way.
Well, I always think back to that Wired article from 20 years ago when they were talking about how B2B e-commerce is actually going to be far larger than retail e-commerce. And I would say 100% that's true. And so now we're looking at SaaS as a category of B2B e-commerce, and also all of the online, think of like business insurance, any sort of business service that you can purchase online, all your supply chain. So it's a very broad category.
Wow, cool. Okay, so I don't want anybody to be scared right now because we're using a lot of big words and big terms, and we are the Simple and Smart SEO Show. We're gonna break some of this down for those of us who are like, well, SaaS, what are these things? But I just think it's so important to establish what an authority rate is in this industry, and so it's just going to be just a treat for all of us to get to learn some of these things. But one thing I wanted to talk to you first about, I didn't tell you this, that book, Product-Led SEO by Eli Schwartz. Wow, you recommended it at the conference, and so I decided to read it. Why did you recommend it?
I think Eli has always had a really good perspective on things. I first met him when he was at SurveyMonkey way back in the day, and I was just getting started with my company, and he gave me a lot of really good feedback. I come from an engineering background, and I was showing him what I had and obviously wanted to impress him, and he just shared with me the way he looked at things. And I think the big impression that I had from him at that point was he really cared about matching what the product you're building is really to the needs of your users versus simply thinking about it in terms of like, how much money can I make, or what kind of like the more short-term transactional goals. And that always stuck with me. And as we developed further, we naturally realized that the companies that we were working with that were the most successful in e-commerce were those companies that very tightly integrated SEO into their product management capabilities. A lot of companies, large and small, we see it all over the place, view SEO as that free traffic you get from Google if you spend a little time on it and maybe hire a couple of consultants. And really, it just doesn't work that way. The companies that we've seen get to the point where they're category leaders, they treat SEO as the core part of their business. We always say good SEO is good product management, and good product management is good SEO. And what that means is that every single aspect of the way you build your website, how you position your products to your customers, your user experience, your graphic design, all of that really falls under, from our view, the category of SEO. And I think Google has long been pushing that message as well. It's all about what type of experience are searchers going to come when they come to your website? Are they going to see content that is authoritative, backed by actual experience? Is it easy to interact with? All of these things really matter. And I think Google, that's one of the areas where Google has been doing a great job helping website owners to understand the importance of all of that.
It's interesting because I came from a teaching background. I was actually a PE teacher. I was a special needs PE teacher, and I used to coach high school volleyball. I was a varsity volleyball coach for a few years as well. And so coming into this industry, at first, the SEO advice that I ran into was very transactional, like very, we'll give you this for this. And I was trying to understand how that worked because I have a Shopify site and I'm thinking that doesn't really make sense for my business, or I'm not sure how I could measure that success. And I know that there's a place for certain things, but I was really taken aback by the transactional nature of the business. And so as I started to research more and more, there was just some things that didn't align with how I approached SEO for my own business. And reading this book, it was just so comforting. And I was like, I'm not a crazy person. My main products, and this is just an example, this is an old one. I made this for my son when he was 4. I started selling on Etsy like in 2013, but my product is very personal and I interact a lot with my client. I'm always thinking about them, always thinking about the user experience, always thinking about how hard is it for them actually to finish the sale? How do they feel after they purchase? All of those types of things. So when I heard SEO and then I discovered UX design, I was like, to me, SEO and UX are just so intertwined, they can't ignore each other.
Totally. Yeah. 100%. And it's very hard to convince people of that mindset if they don't already have it. Mm-hmm. It does seem to be this like intuitive, you either get it or you don't. I think we're fortunate in the fact that a lot more people who do get it are becoming attracted to our industry. So we're seeing a lot more of it. Even 5 years ago, it was not like that. In many places, not all places, in many places, it was just all about what can you do for me in the next quarter or two.
Yeah. Okay. One other thing that you said at the conference, you said that the days of traditional rank tracking are over. You remember talking about that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a core part of our belief as well. And it actually does go back to this product-led SEO idea, which is if you look at the search engine results page, or the SERP as it's commonly shortened, what Google is presenting to you as a searcher is a ton of options and lots of different things that you can do. And the old days, it used to be about, are you ranking number 1? Are you ranking number 2? Are you in the top 3? And that sort of thing. I don't want to say that those things don't matter anymore because they do matter. Really, in most cases, you have to be ranking in the top 3 to really get any sort of traffic, but still like just a bare minimum amount of information that you need to know from what the SERP can really tell you, because that top 3 position may not even be visible to a user when they first go to search on something. Could be below what we call the fold or that first scroll, because Google may have a bunch of ads on top of that. They may have a bunch of different features that they've built for the searcher themselves, rich snippets and everything else. And so all of that information is very important set of clues that the user is interacting with before they even come to your website. And so as a website owner, why would you not want to understand those factors that are influencing your customer behavior before they even see your site? And so that's where traditional rank tracking just focuses on, oh, okay, what's my rank? And is it going up or down? At the end of the day, that's what it is. There's trends and everything else, but that's basically what it comes down to. And our argument is that, yeah, sure, you need that. Beyond that, to understand the shape of the SERP, what the user is seeing, understand all the different factors that are influencing their decision, where else they may be going, and it may not even be a competitor website. And so that one of the core things that we offer as a company is we offer a lot of data and insights into understanding that. And
so why is that crucial for, and how did that interact with a successful SEO strategy? Is there anything you can do to mitigate if you're showing up high, but yet not even making it to the top of the search engine results page because of all the other stuff Google's offering now?
Absolutely. One of the nice things about the things that Google is offering is that there are places for website owners to show up in those other types of results. So you've got different types of rich snippets. You've got things like people also ask your website may be used for that. There's shopping results. There's all sorts of results that as a website owner, you can be included in that aren't a traditional rank. And so you really need to have a handle on what that looks like. And are you there? Are you not there? Is your competitor there? Do you even know what's there? Like all of these things are really important for people to understand, because in the case of some of these richer features, if they live above the traditional organic rankings, that may be all a searcher ever sees. They may not even know about the rankings below the scroll. And so that it's very important to be present there as much as possible. And we haven't even started talking about what Google is going to be doing with their SGE or their search generative experience, their AI stuff, right? That's going to further solidify the need to understand what that looks like, because there's going to be a whole new set of results that show up above all of the other results that are generated by Google's AI capabilities.
Okay, so I do want to follow up with you on that in just a minute, but I want to give a specific example of how my website has actually done a couple of those things. Yeah. And we talked about it here on the show, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm no genius here, but some of the things that I've done is naming my images based on what people are searching for and utilizing like offsite strategies like Pinterest. I was just talking about that today, like the power of unbranded search. So a lot of times, because I'm e-commerce and selling a product, the shopping results will show up at the top of the page. And so I've been fortunate that my Shopify store product shows up there, my Amazon store product shows up there, and then my Etsy store products show up there, which is great. So we're covered, and then Etsy's running ads on my behalf. So it's like, yay. So I'm showing up in the ads, showing up in the shopping results, and then the images, like in the image results, we also show up there for the different products that we've made over the years. And it's been a happy accident that those things happen, and they actually happened before I knew anything about SEO, but it was just because I was talking about the product that we create and it aligned with what the person was searching for. And so therefore, even though we may be like say number 5 in the organic search results, we're still showing up in multiple places in those image results.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Being able to capture that and understand that. And then for you, how many products do you sell on your, is there like a variation, or is it variations on one major product?
There's probably about, I think, 6 or 7 collections of products, wooden products, numbers, letters, marquee numbers and letters, collages.
And would you see that too, where some e-commerce companies have a smaller number of products and then others are like millions? So think about, those are some of the problems that we get pulled into sometimes, where you do have hundreds of millions of different products selling. How do you really understand all the different possibilities that can appear on the search results at that scale without turning that into data? And we see that as a very important thing to really monitor.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about SGE.
Yeah.
What is this?
Probably a lot of people have played with it. Probably even more people have played with ChatGPT by this point. But Google was very early on AI, obviously, in a lot of different ways. But I think everyone was a little bit taken off guard by how ChatGPT really took things to another level with the way that you could interact with language models and AI. And it's been very interesting. So I think Google was like, we need to have something here ASAP, because they want to continue to maintain their position on the market and everything. And so they rushed it out, but then they've been refining it since then. But basically what I think of it as anyway is they put a chat widget at the top of their search results page, and it does different things. You have to be logged in order to see it, and you have to be in a Chrome browser. Basically, it's that thing that'll show up. Sometimes it auto expands, sometimes it does not. And so that's going to be one important factor, I think, for website owners on whether it does or not. And then basically the type of content that they put in there really depends on what you're searching for. Sometimes they'll try to replicate almost like an e-commerce storefront with a lot of different, also like shopping type results showing up there. Sometimes it'll just be their own little content marketing attempts where they're generating content to answer a question. So we can talk more about search intent and stuff, but I think that's a big factor there. But basically they're experimenting. It's still experimental, but they're experimenting with this idea of how can their AI more accurately anticipate somebody is really looking for and just give that to them versus trying to get them to scroll through a bunch of different results and figure it out for themselves.
I was an early adopter of Jasper. So I love utilizing Jasper, especially for meta descriptions and Shopify. I was like, where have you been all my life? But then when they came out with the chat function after ChatGPT launched, I did not like it at first. Like I had my ways of doing things. So then when it came time to like actually utilize the chat, I was hesitant. But now I chat with Jasper like he's my friend and ask him different questions. So I almost think that those who came in on the ChatGPT side, they're going to really embrace this SGE upgrade or whatever you want to call it that Google's giving us. But I've noticed there's two different things that showed up for me. Once it showed up as like a big square at the top with a bunch of summarized information. And then another time it said, do you want to have like that summarized information along with what you talked about with the shopping? How can businesses still get somebody to come to their website when that's popping up at the top?
That is the question that everyone has right now. So it's still early. Google is it's still in an experimental phase. So we don't really know yet what the end result is going to be. I think that what everyone is looking at right now is basically there is still a connection between ranking on the SERP and showing up in those results. So people that tend to rank higher will usually have at least one or two mentions in that generated things. From that perspective, the basics of traditional SEO that we can talk about, EEAT and so forth, that definitely has an impact and will continue to. We're also, and this is a pretty hot topic at Brighton, was this idea of digital PR kind of going beyond the idea of traditional link building. Backlinks, they do matter, of course, but there's a lot of talk around this idea of maybe even more than a direct backlink, it's more important to have your brand name mentioned in any type of different conversation, because the big shift that Google is probably making here is, and Mike King talked about this and it's a really good keynote. He talked about the shift in search from the traditional kind of keyword-based search to more of the semantic-based search. And what that means basically is going from just looking at the text to looking at the meaning of the word and the context of the word. And so Google, as they're continuing to upgrade their systems, they're looking at building ranking models around the context of the text. And they've been doing this for a long time, of course, but I think it's continuing to accelerate. And from that perspective, the actual context of the text that they're indexing on the web will potentially be even more impactful than a direct link, assuming all the right conditions are in place. And so I think that's a major selling point behind the digital PR pitch. And, it's early again, I would say, but we're starting to see people move in that direction. So that would be one of the things to watch for.
Yeah. So you mentioned AT.
Yep.
Could you give us a definition for that acronym?
Yeah. Basically, it goes back to authenticity. And so I'll just read it here because already some Google it, but basically it comes down to do you have direct experience with it? So it's experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. And so experience is really the most important thing, I think, the way Google is looking at it and the way they're starting to reward everything. Because with going back to what you said about Jasper, AI content generation is a thing. And we've already had like a prototype version of that with like outsourced offshore content creation at scale with all the different content farms. And so what Google really wants to know to the degree possible is, does the person who's writing about this topic actually have direct experience with this thing? Or are they just some sort of content farm? And so that is going to be human experience is definitely going to be a big differentiator between AI generated content and human content. That being said, I've already seen websites that are completely AI generated top to bottom, including graphics. And what they're doing now is they're starting to put in things like, hi, my name is Layla, or my name is Bob, and I have this experience. And so you can tell that they're already like trying to.
And that was going to be my question is, okay, if Google wants experience, but how do they know? What is it that checks the box for experience?
Exactly. And so that's why I think they look at more than just experience. So expertise is one that is pretty hard to fake. That's one of the problems that I have. There's a lot of content that I want to write on LinkedIn or on our blog and so forth. And I get pitches all the time for, hey, we can write your content for you, or we've got this AI tool and everything. As much as I would love to be able to scale myself that way, I haven't bitten off on that because I'm not convinced that someone can talk about the topic the same way that I can. Mm-hmm. That's expertise. I know that there are certain things that I'm good at and I can lend authority to that. And authority, which is the next letter in the acronym, comes out of that expertise. You have that capability and people understand. This is a very human thing. We can just tell right away if someone is, so that's another one. And that obviously feeds into the next one, which is trustworthiness, which is, does this person or does this website have a track record of delivering reliable information? There's different sides of the concept of misinformation and disinformation out there right now on the internet, and different parties involved in creating different types of content. And so over time, both Google and searchers are always maintaining this record of whether or not a given person or a given website is trustworthy. And so how Google actually evaluates all of that, it's not always clear to us on the outside, but I think that they've probably developed some pretty interesting technology to address that.
Yeah. And I know when you were speaking, I remember there's that point where you were talking about something and you're like, it might get a little nerdy here. And I remember that was the moment where you got my attention because I was like, that's what I came for. Like, I want to hear the nitty gritty details of how this stuff works. So I appreciate that so much. And I also appreciate the fact that you recognized, hey, look, someone else speaking about something that I do is not going to give people the same expert level opinion that I can do myself. And so I really appreciate that you said that, because I've worked with some clients, and again, I'm new to SEO the last couple of years, and they just want to hand it off to me. Like, you just take care of it. You're the expert. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm the SEO. You're the expert. And so that's a tough conversation to have, because I think some business owners, especially small business owners, they think, oh, I'm going to hand off this project to you, where it's more of, no, this is a partnership where I'm going to really showcase. So I love that you have that approach.
It is one of the hardest things to convey. I'm not surprised that you run into that too. And actually, going back to Eli, he had a really good quote about this a couple months ago, where he said the difference between paying for traffic via advertising versus and building long-term organic traffic via SEO is basically the difference between renting a house and owning a house. When you're renting a house, or when you're renting traffic through some ad network, you're already able to do that. You can just say, you go get me that traffic and I don't want to deal with it. When you're owning something, and suddenly you're the one who has to wake up and fix the furnace at 3 a.m. because you're building that equity and you have to do a lot more. And it comes down to what you want over the long term. The trade-off is that you get assets out of the deal by investing in that equity. And I think that's a very powerful analogy that he had for people.
Yeah. That idea of digital assets was another kind of term that I took away from the conference that I never thought about it quite like that. And for what I do, my main client is senior moms, and I just love to celebrate moms. Like, it's a big thing that I feel like, because my mother left when I was a baby. So I always had this soft spot for mother-child relationships. And I just always want to celebrate a mom that I see. And I'm like, you're doing a great job. And I also have friends who are moms who have athletes who are going to college. And I'm excited because our next venture for my website, collagenwood.com, is to interview people about the NIL situation in college athletics. So that's the
NIL. What is it?
It stands for name, image, and likeness. And how the college athletes are getting paid now. Yeah, but it is big business. And there's actually coordinators at the universities. There's third-party integrations. It's really getting messy, I think. And
I didn't know that was legal even. That's interesting.
Yeah. It just happened a couple of years ago. So I started writing about it when it first was overturned by the NCAA that athletes could get paid. But now it's we need to get on the inside of this so parents and kids can know what to expect and how to navigate it. And some of these college athletes, they're posting videos on their Instagram with their Teslas that just got wrapped in vinyl. It is insane.
Crazy.
Yeah. Super insane. So
it's good to know. I've got one athlete that could potentially be at that point down the road. So
yeah. See, you're my target.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's not just moms, it's great dads too. Yeah. But my point is, those are the ways that I'm excited that I've learned that I can connect with my people, my clients that are going to buy from me, because there are points along their journey where I can still serve them, or they can come back and find out information. And so that this all comes back to that idea of a digital asset. Like, I really want to create some linkable assets that are statistical in nature. Is that right? Statistical? I don't know if that's the correct term.
My question around that is there like an NFT angle to this? Has that become a conversation?
That's a good question. I'll definitely put it in the conversation to the guys that I'll be talking to. I'm sure there is. If it's financial, it's all up for grabs. Yeah. Crazy stuff.
I didn't know that. It's good to know. I had no idea. It's encouraging to see that, because the schools, they make so much money off of wellness sports, and you want the kids and families to be able to benefit from that too. Obviously, there's like a whole new set of incentives probably that come along with that. But
Yeah. And problems and challenges and wins. But it's like everything, there's good and bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So when we're talking about like those things in the search engine results pages being volatile or whatever, or not being seen, how can small business owners effectively monitor that without the resources of a larger company?
Yeah. So I would definitely start with Google Search Console. They keep adding more and more tools, and that's a free tool that's available to any website owner. And all the resources that they put on their documentation for Search Console, they've done a really good job, I think, with that. Their data doesn't necessarily show you all of the things that you should be monitoring, but they'll give you a really good baseline and shows you all the data about the different keywords that are driving traffic and so forth. And then if you want to go deeper, it's one of the things that we provide with our demand metrics platform. And we work with basically people from small startups to multinational companies. And so it's something that scales really well. It just comes down to the type of volume that you're dealing with, and all the data and analytics are the same. And so those are two places that we try to help people understand that those are resources that are available to them. And so I think it's going to continue to, as the industry grows, you're going to see a lot more of that stuff come out too. There's so many smart people building things, and there's different facets and angles to all of this. There's just so many different ways to go down one rabbit hole. So it really depends on what your particular challenges are and what your particular niche may be.
When you think about mobile versus desktop, do you have any recommendations on where people should focus? Because I know a lot of people are creating their websites. Let's just use Shopify, for example. They're creating their websites on Shopify and they're creating it in the desktop view. Do you think that's the best way to do it? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think that depends a lot on your audience. For me, I'm more of a desktop shopper. I don't even log into Amazon or anything on my phone, but I'm also Gen X. I'm not a millennial. I'm not Gen Z. So I don't know what that would look like. Yeah. So are you more of a desktop or a mobile purchaser?
I'm a little bit of both. It depends. If I'm on Instagram or TikTok late at night and I'm just weak with my self-control, I might purchase something right there on my phone as long as my card is stored. But my card is stored on my computer. So typically I do most of my shopping on my laptop.
Yeah. I personally like the shopping experience better on a laptop, but really that just comes down to data. You have to understand Google Analytics will tell you very quickly whether most of your transactions happen, and you'll probably know some of the tools of Shopify and so forth as well. But what we see in most cases, it's usually not either or, it's usually a mix of both. And it's sometimes 60-40 or 70-30 in one direction or the other.
Okay. And we had mentioned this just in our chats offline, but we were talking about the concept of localization.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could define that for us and give us like what that means in the context of SEO.
Sure. Yeah. Basically, it comes down to language. Most cases, it'll be international. In some places like the US, you have a lot of different cultures and languages here too. And so it may not even be necessarily international. You're working with different audiences that come from different backgrounds. So a lot of our larger customers, they're e-commerce companies that have a big market in America and in the UK and maybe Germany, France, Japan, places in South America and so forth. And in each one of those markets, you have different content in different languages. When you can really start to see the difference between the smart players and the ones that are still figuring it all out, are whether or not they understand the difference between translation and localization. Mm-hmm. And what that means is translation is you can just feed that through Google Translate almost these days and get an okay output to translate your content. Maybe you can hire a team of translators to edit it and everything, but that is not even table stakes, really, if you want to perform well in these markets. And in order to do well, localization is really a better way to look at it. And so that's more going to, are you using the type of words that your direct audience is actually using? We see this a lot in Japan, for example, where there's 3 different writing systems in Japan, or depending on whether or not you include the English letters in there as well. And depending on the brand or the product, they may use different or both of those different language systems or writing system for their content. And that may not be how the brand chooses to represent it. And so you have to understand what the searcher is using, what they're looking for. And so just from a keyword targeting perspective, you have to understand what that looks like. Data can help you with that, but also you need some sort of expertise in the market. So that's part of it.
Sorry, we had to raise my, everybody gets a kick out of it. Okay, so I have 2 follow-up questions to that, because with Shopify, they'll give you the option to add other placements, other markets, but on, say, like a SEO tool might look at that and say you have duplicate pages, because even if it's in English, like there's one for, the UK, one for the United States. Is that bad, or how do you deal with those things?
You can handle that through you probably are aware of the hreflang HTML.
I have seen those letters all put together before. Yeah.
So that's basically a way to give Google a directive about what language and which region you're targeting with that. And so that'll help you avoid some of those penalties around duplicate content and so forth.
Okay. And then the follow-up to that would be one of my clients, when I was looking at her Google Search Console, one of the opportunities that just presented itself over and over again was her keywords in Spanish.
Yes. And that's a good example in America because we have English, we have Spanish. Yeah, probably a decent Chinese speaking population. In like SoCal, for example, we've got a lot of Japanese. So it just depends, but there may be very valuable market categories within the US that have languages where the English is not the primary language. So you have to understand that too.
So the advice then would probably be the same, to use that or whatever to create duplicate pages, but in Spanish?
Potentially, yeah. I would say that's another one that really depends on the business and everything. But a lot of times too, they'll use that tag in combination with a different URL structure as well. And so they'll have whatever.com/EN US or US English. And that allows you to separate the country from the language. And so you'll see this a lot in Belgium. You'll have like French and Flemish, basically different languages, same country. You can just choose which one you're more comfortable with. You don't see that as much right now in the US, but I think we are going to see more of it. If you use that combination of segmenting your URLs properly and making sure you've got the right HTML tags set up, then you'll be in pretty good shape.
Okay. I'm definitely going to tell her about that, because there's definitely so many business owners who are searching for what she offers in Espanol. So I thought
it's a no-brainer if you've got that audience. Is she like she provides services locally, or is it all e-commerce, or?
It's digital products, actually, like financial digital products.
Yeah. Okay. That's a no-brainer for sure. And if it's just English and Spanish and her audience is primarily in the US anyway, and it's digital.
Exactly. Ooh, yeah. I'm not a programmer, but that was definitely something that I want to explore with her. Okay. Oh, I know our time is coming to the end here, and I'm sad. So I'm looking through my questions to see, okay, what's the big daddy that we should end on here? I know there's one question that I definitely wanted to make sure I asked. If there's one thing that a small business owner could do to increase visibility of their website and therefore hopefully profitability, what do you think that one thing is?
So really good question. The natural answer is SEO, of course, but so many things in our industry, it does depend on who you are. If you're a small company, carpet cleaning or something like that, SEO will help you, but you're going to have to do it properly. And I know people who have built multiple $1 million businesses in that type of industry just with pamphlets that they're handing out. And so the answer is not all digital at first. There may be a non-digital way to get people to come to your website, and then they see how things are working. A buddy of mine runs one of the, if not the only 5-star on Google Maps auto repair shop. And he has more business than he'll ever be able to handle. And it's not like 10 5-stars. It's like thousands of 5-stars, which is kind of unheard of. And his business has been built on word of mouth and Google Maps. He doesn't really have a website. So that's another one. Going into e-commerce, obviously it's going to be a lot more like digital focus and stuff, but there's always creative ways to use the off internet world to get people to think about it, in addition to just traditional SEO. So obviously I'm a big fan of SEO. Ads obviously can help. And going back to the idea of what are your users looking for, you have to think about how your users and how your audience is consuming information and where they're going to come across new things.
Yeah. This is so awesome. I think you could tell I could just sit here and listen for so long. I'm like, this is so great.
So always good to talk with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much. And do you want to just share where people can access and connect with you if they're thinking, oh, wow, he said something that I think I need to follow up on?
Yep. In terms of social networks, I'm on LinkedIn, so I'm always happy to connect with people and chat there. It's been a really fun way to meet people. And I am on Twitter, but I've got 40 followers there. So feel free to connect, but I don't have a huge presence there. And then, our website is demandsphere.com, DEA, demand, and then sphere like the ball.
And that's where the product for SEO lives.
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ray.
It was good to chat with you.
Yeah, I hope you had fun. I know that we are all benefiting from your knowledge. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're listening right now and you have any questions, want to follow up, definitely email me. And yeah, we'll just keep growing together. So until next time.
Matane.